Hello and welcome to the Guardian Football Weekly. A huge win for Nottingham Forest at the bottom of the Premier League. West Ham were a little unlucky. A second goal disallowed just before the equaliser, and the agony of Alphonse Areola punching Morgan Gibbs-White in the head because the ball had gone. Poor, sad Nuno. Does this result mean the bottom three is done? A week into the new year, Liam Rosenior arrives at Chelsea. Martin O'Neill arrives at Celtic again. And Darren Fletcher says he runs every big decision past Sir Alex. Seems time-consuming. In the EFL, how serious is the Coventry wobble? Could Preston or Millwall last the course? We'll do a League One and League Two roundup as Cambridge are 2 points off the automatics. Let's start at the London Stadium. West Ham 1, Nottingham Forest 2. Martin says, just looking forward to the Nuno voice note. I presume you've already written one. Tanguy says, instead of the post-pod voice note, can you do the pod as though Nuno has already been sacked? Yeah, if you're listening to this, Nuno has been sacked. They're 7 points behind Forest. It's such a huge result, Barry. And I really feel, Nuno, we were saying before we came on air, Nuno does sad like no one else does sad, but I think he was really unlucky in this.
I'm not sure about that. I didn't think Nottingham Forest played particularly well, but I thought they were the better team. Alphonse Areola had to make an incredible save in the first half. Callum Hudson-Odoi smacked one off the bar. And then Forest went behind, and I thought they went behind very much against the run of play. I'm happy to concede that Forest's winner, the penalty, was the awarding that was contentious. And I think the second West Ham goal that was chalked off, I'm not so sure that should have been, but apparently the correct decision was made. If that is the correct decision, I don't think it should be. But if West Ham get relegated, it won't be because Nottingham Forest beat them last night, or it won't be because a bad decision or two went against them last night. They're a diabolical team. Yesterday was one of their better performances in recent times, and they still lost. And I'm not going to say it's impossible for them to get themselves out of this mess. It's only, in inverted commas, 7 points. But it's going to be very difficult. And reports coming out of the West Ham camp seem to suggest that morale is at absolute rock bottom, that the players don't particularly like Nuno, that he doesn't particularly like quite a few of the players, that he's very distant and aloof. David Sullivan and Karen Brady have been in charge of this circus for a long time now, and they're running the club into the ground. It's only 3 years ago since they won a European Cup, sold Declan Rice for 105 million quid. They've wasted every penny of that. I'm not going to say trot out the, David Moyes, be careful what you wish for. I could see the logic of not renewing his contract when he left. But it's an absolute mess. And even the fans seem to have given up. There was an awful lot of empty seats in that stadium last night. And I could totally understand why fans wouldn't want to go to watch that crap on a freezing cold Tuesday night.
Yeah, terrible stadium, terrible weather, terrible football. That should be the tagline, shouldn't it? On the penalty, George, you're not sure.
Yeah, there's been very little controversy around this, I should say, and I should probably learn from the past that complaining about penalty decisions when no one really seems fussed is normally a way to make yourself unpopular. But I'm kind of surprised how happily everyone accepted that it was overturned by VAR. To my mind, there is a very big difference between this incident and, say, the Onana one against Wolves, where Areola and Gibbs-White are both going for the ball. Areola with his gloves and Morgan Gibbs-White with his head. But Thomas Souček gets there first, and therefore the ball doesn't get anywhere near either of them. So it's not the case that Areola is therefore wiping out Gibbs-White, who gets there first. You know, my analogy is it's almost like a clash of heads where they've both gone for the ball, neither of them are anywhere near it. But because Areola has, he can use his hands, he's therefore been punished. It wasn't, I don't think, a foul in the kind of the classic sense of the word. I can understand if the referee had given it a foul on the pitch, why it would be upheld. But for VAR, again, it's the whole do you want to forensically officiate every single moment of every game? And yeah, it's an incident where if you zoom in on the incident and you ignore that the ball's even in play and you do freeze frame, you can obviously see that Areola makes contact with Gibbs-White's face, which in itself seems like it should be a foul. But actually, when you break it down, he's a goalkeeper. He is totally entitled to try and punch that ball. There's no we don't know. Had Souček not got there, he might have got there ahead of Gibbs-White. It just seems like a punishment that in no way befits the crime. It doesn't seem to me like the proper use of VAR. As I say, if Gibbs-White had got there first and then Areola cleans him out, then it's quite clearly a penalty. But this isn't that, and I can understand why Areola seems pretty flummoxed when the penalty was awarded. He looked like he couldn't really believe it because, I normally hate when it's wheeled out this it's a contact sport because quite often that's used to justify fouls. But I think in this case, if goalkeepers are allowed to come and claim, if goalkeepers are allowed to come and punch, then there's going to be physical contact. And just because it's a hand to the face doesn't necessarily mean it's excessive force or anything like that. So if I was a West Ham fan, I'd feel pretty aggrieved that VAR decided to overturn it.
Yeah, interesting, because I had just gone, well, that's unlucky, but it is a foul. But you have given a very persuasive argument, George. I don't know if you're right or wrong, but you were very persuasive.
I think George has given a very persuasive argument. I don't necessarily agree with it, but what I think is quite interesting is Rob Green was a pundit on Sky, and after the game, he thought the decision to award a penalty is correct. And you would imagine he would be on the side of the goalkeeper, but he wasn't in this instance. So make of that what you will.
The offside, Sanny, is, I believe under the laws, it is offside. He's coming back from an offside position. There is a tackle, but the attacking player touches the ball. So, but even still, it's one of those moments where West Ham are better off if Somerville doesn't score. Because if he misses, then there isn't this kind of the wind goes out of your sails. You thought you were 2-0 up, and then maybe Nottingham Forest don't come straight back into it.
Yeah, and that moment of relief as well around the stadium for those fans that were there. There was that real kind of palpable feeling, even watching on TV, that maybe we've turned a corner and all of a sudden they haven't. I mean, as it happens, on that offside, because I made a snap decision after 20 minutes on the WhatsApp group and Castellanos and said, not so keen on this guy. I just looked at his, just lazily looked at his stats, and the FOTMob app makes like a Pro Evo style little diagram, and his map kind of looks as if he's a big man who gets himself, not too many touches and knocks it down. And I've got Castellanos, he's a big guy. He's like 5'10". So I was like, okay, all right. So what does he actually do here? And, his opportunities didn't quite take him. And I suppose it would be amazing if he'd hit the ground running. But the offside came because he'd made a run. And because he's new and he was signed like the day before, like the players don't quite know how to play with him yet. Obviously, they're only still learning that. And so he times his run. He doesn't get the ball. I think it was Somerville on the counter originally, quick enough, and so he's already moved slightly offside because he hasn't got the ball in time, and then he's coming back. So that was kind of where I think that offside kind of came up, because that's like his back and his arse was offside or something. So it's like it's the finest margins when with based out of a player you've just signed, and then they had the other Brazilian signing on the bench as well, didn't he? Who came on and took one and skied one like 20 yards over the bar or something, which was just... It always looks worse in that stadium, by the way. It probably wasn't 20 yards over the bar, but perspective just makes it look like it's gone into outer space. So, yeah, it was really unfortunate, and it kind of sums things up, doesn't it? And so all in all, very depressing. And you're right, Nuno does make some very sad faces. I mean, Barry's summation of it all made me feel really depressed. And then George's explanation of it not being a penalty. I watched the replay whilst he was saying it like 18 times now. So he's kind of won me over too. So I'm in a very impressionable mood, clearly. But overall, yeah, very sad for West Ham. And it's all going to come to Nuno, isn't it?
And also the other unlucky point is that Kyle Walker-Peters is so short. And if they'd had someone slightly taller on the post, he might have headed away the equaliser. Barry, what do we think? I mean... Nuno is not in a great spot, but what do West Ham do? They've given him a lot of money to spend.
I mean, they could do anything. Nothing would surprise me. Having him there clearly isn't working. If you're going to replace him, who do you replace him with? Who would want that job? I still think he was nuts to take it. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know if Max is joking, by the way. I have no idea. I wouldn't
be even remotely surprised if he was fired, as is customary, 5 minutes after we're finished here. That would be his second sacking of the season, which is 2 nice payouts, but it's a record you'd imagine nobody wants. I I don't know. You can't predict what David Sullivan and Karen Brady will do because they could do anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Meanwhile, it is massive for Forest, George, isn't it? And we were thinking, is this squad too good to be in that position? Or is it actually, if you look, most of the Premier League squads are quite good. And so someone will be about 16th, 17th with not a bad set of players.
Yeah, last season, 16th, 17th was Manchester United and Tottenham, wasn't it? This is definitely the case where the Premier League is getting more competitive. This season in particular, because you've got Sunderland who came up and basically completely revolutionised their playing squad into a Premier League squad over the course of one summer, and Leeds who were incredibly strong coming up out of the Championship anyway, which means that what's been quite a cushy life if you're a kind of bottom half Premier League side, knowing that the teams coming up from the Championship are generally going to be much worse than you, means that teams like West Ham and Forest are now really under threat. I do think if you look at Forest's team, like Elliot Anderson will start for England in the World Cup this summer, centre midfield for a team with aspirations to win the league next season, or Manchester United. Aspirations, I did say, so that kind of still works. Morgan Gibbs-White is another one who could easily play for any team in the country. So they do have the quality through their team, but yeah, I guess what happened last season probably means that expectation levels rise beyond where they should be. And it's not a huge surprise that they kind of regressed a little bit, especially with the added intensity of having to play European football too on various Thursdays. So yeah, it is. This is always going to happen. Teams are always going to drop off, and but certainly when you look at the squads and the 11s, Forest's looks to me to be far more stat than West Ham's, where yes, you can still point to a couple of quality players, but for the most part, it's a bit of a shambles.
Yeah, I think it's a massive drop from Forest to West Ham. Moving on, as expected, Liam Rosenior, as we pronounce it, was appointed Chelsea head coach yesterday. Quite a short contract for Blue Coast standards, 6.5 years. The last manager that lasted more than 3 years at Chelsea was Jose about 20 years ago. Signed from Strasbourg, of course. He said, "I'm so excited for the future. My whole life has worked to be a coach. Now to be presented this opportunity at a world-class football club is something I've always dreamed of. With that, it's a mixed emotion of sadness of what I'm leaving behind. This is the last day I wake up as Strasbourg manager." The Strasbourg Supporters Federation are angry about this. They're angry about Blue Coat's involvement anyway in the club. And they said the transfer of Liam Rosenior marks another humiliating step in racing's subservience to Chelsea. For 2.5 years, along with others, we've been trying to raise the alarm about this. The problem goes far beyond the mid-season sporting impact and the ambitions of a young coach. The future of French club football is at stake. And Gary, I was going to call you Gary Barry, but that's because Gary O'Neill is the new manager. But Barry, they make a very good point, don't they? This is the multi-club ownership model will always have these problems.
Yeah, they do make an excellent point, and they're dead right. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that it's a big problem for French football because Nice are in a similar position. But despite the fact that Blue Co have pumped millions and millions of pounds into Strasbourg, these fans would rather be poor and worse, but not have to be beholden to Chelsea, which is what they are. And I don't think it's right that a top flight team in one of the big 5 leagues in Europe should be basically like a spare parts shop for a top flight team in another league. They're clear, I think their use of the word subservient is absolutely spot on. It's technically a partnership, but they're very much the very junior partner, and Chelsea just use them as somewhere to farm out players they don't want or cherry pick players they do want, and now cherry pick manager they want. Like Strasbourg are 7th in the top flight. They're not some minnows who just stumbled upon promotion or something. They're a good side, but how are they supposed to progress if whenever anyone at Strasbourg is doing well, Chelsea just go and go, "Oh, we'll have that. Yeah, thanks."
And even if they were minnows, the principle still stands. George, I just wonder, have any League One or League Two sides, I don't know if you know this, kind of been on the radar of a big side in another European country. You know, we don't sort of see it that way. That you know, someone in League Two gets picked up by Barca.
I remember when I was about 5 years old, the front page of the Oxford Mail saying that we're going to get bought by Juventus, we being Oxford United. But since then, I haven't really heard of anything off the top of my head. I don't think any League One or League Two side has been part of a multi-club model as of yet. I mean, surely it will happen. I guess there's probably a financial, the cost of investing in clubs lower down the pyramid in other countries will be far smaller and much less of a loss leader than buying one in League One and League Two right now. But I guess with if the independent regulator is successful, then that might change over the coming years. It's something that I would absolutely despise, frankly, having really hated the idea of B teams entering the EFL trophy, which happened as a possible kind of way for them to come into the EFL. I think multi-club ownership would be just kind of pretty similar to that in terms of things we wouldn't want to see happen to our pyramid.
Roman Duchâtelet, who was owner of Charlton, and his multi-club ownership included owning a series of clubs across Europe that were all terrible and progressively made them all worse at the same time.
Yeah,
I mean, if that really counts, but
maybe
Charlton
not. But it does mean you can do the best. It's the best name to say is Jim White, isn't it? Roland Duchâtelet. Celtic parted company with Wilfred Nancy. What a pity. His 3-1 defeat by Rangers, his 6th loss in 8 matches, his 33-day run. The shortest in the club's history. Martin O'Neill is back. And his press conference, Sanny, was great fun, wasn't it? I mean, clearly this is a guy that just doesn't really... I wonder if he feels so liberated that will reflect to the players immediately. It's just this sort of carefree saying stuff about players who wanted to leave and didn't and going, should I have said that? I don't know. Who cares? You know, it's like the Heineken advert, isn't it? Heineken, Schmeineken, champagne, caviar, whatever.
Yeah, it was amazing, and I might get in trouble, but I'll say this anyway. So, the start of his press conference opened, and I put it in our WhatsApp group. Opened with him saying that he'd had a séance with Elvis and Frank Sinatra, and they were both upset with him that he's had more comebacks in them. And then he goes, "Don't put that in." Let's start this again. That was a crap joke, not realising that this was essentially going out live on Sky Sports. But what I've noticed is, I don't think anyone else has reported this. I think it went out, and then no one else has... Everyone's gone, oh no, we really don't want to upset Celtic. We don't want to upset Martin O'Neill this early. Let's not mention it. But it's gone out on live TV. I can't have been the only one who's seen that.
Maybe we don't want to upset the estate of Elvis, perhaps. Is that or Frank Sinatra?
Maeda they get one of the reporters. I said, "What dies in Maeda?" And he just reveals that he was going to go off to the Bundesliga. I think it might have been Wolfsburg. And he says it in that sort of tone, and they're like, "Is that news to you?" He wasn't going to go there. That wasn't going to happen. But it's great. But I guess when he's the Scrooge McDuck. In this situation when it comes to credit in the bank at Celtic. Like, he could do whatever he wants and he's okay because of what his record's been, because then he came back and won every game, and because they are completely up the shitter and they've had to come back to him again. I mean, I saw a great post online that he basically just needed Christmas and New Year off in between his job and just took the leave and came back, which is a great way to look at it. And if that press conference is anything to go by, yeah, he's his own man, and I have no doubt that he'll make a success in the short-term period as Celtic boss.
I mean, he can't do worse, can he? Did you have any thoughts, Baz?
Well, I feel a bit sorry for Wilfred Nancy, I have to say. He leaves Celtic with his reputation in tatters, I think. Mm-hmm. And his spell in charge was shorter than Martin O'Neill's interim spell before he got the job. I mean, that is... you can dress it up any way you want. It's humiliation. I notice all his backroom staff have gone as well, and Paul Tisdale, who we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, Celtic's director of football, he also got the boot, so he's clearly been blamed for this mess. I think O'Neill, he's in his mid-70s. He seems to have quite a lot of energy. He seems well up for the job. But he's a chippy character. He's quite spiky. I like him. I hasten to add, I'm a big fan of his. But at least him being there now, and I reckon Sanny's right. He probably will be successful. They do need to plan for his successor, and if they get the next one wrong. But just like West Ham, there's a lot of blame to go around at Celtic, and but at least they seem to have hit on a decent temporary fix.
I saw a really good, about 10 days or so ago, someone said that Wilfred Nancy might be committing the perfect footballing crime where he could go to Celtic in the MLS off-season, get sacked before the season starts and be back in the dugout for Columbus Crew in his previous job, having had the payout from Celtic. But annoyingly for him, Henrik Rydstrom was appointed manager of Columbus Crew 5 days before he was sacked, so that opportunity is gone.
Well, I hope he does come back in somewhere, somehow. But you're right, Barry. I do feel for him. Darren Fletcher gave his first press conference ahead of Manchester United's game against Burnley. He spoke pretty well, I thought. Lots of cliches, of course. Can't disclose if he'll play a back four. He did say the back four is a club formation, though. He's reached out to Ruben Amorim, but not heard back. 2 blue ticks. But nothing, and he wanted Sir Alex to give him his blessing as well. It reeks of DNA. That it's exactly the right thing to say, isn't it? It's like every.
Do you think is it not exactly the wrong thing to say? Because isn't this Manchester United's problem that everyone kowtows to Sir Alex Ferguson? And by all means, ring him, ask for his blessing, ask for his advice, ask for any pointers, but don't tell everyone that's what you've done, because. This is half the problem at Manchester United. Well, maybe he's this spectre at the feast.
The fans love it. That's what Ollie for his whole tenure would come out about young players and say he's the new Michael Carrick, he's the new whoever else. It's all the Manchester United DNA, because it's been so long since any kind of tangible success beyond moments. It feels like at times where things are darkest, they need to lean on that just for basically PR reasons to win people over. Which
football is nostalgia, right? Football is nostalgia. Like that's sort of part of why we love it. So if somebody can come back and do this, I always think everybody talks about Sir Alex phoning them up or them phoning Sir Alex. He's never off the phone. The guy, give him a break. Let him watch MacGyver. He's not got any time because he's on the phone to every ex-manager. He's constantly talking to young players. I don't know his data. He must be running out of data. Yes, sir.
Just on that nostalgia, right? So last night I went into the Guardian archives and found the Guardian had republished Frank McPhee's analysis of Alex Ferguson getting the job in the wake of all the previous managers who hadn't got the job. So that's from 1986. And it almost read like it was now and Alex's Matt Busby. And how every other manager hadn't had that gravitas, or had lacked that part, or they had the enthusiasm but they didn't have the tactical ability. I hasten to say, it might be that we are just repeating ourselves over and over again, but it was exactly the same. It was an incredible bit of writing. There's a bit where he recalls one of the directors had. Tried to tell Matt Busby about tactics and what to do, and Busby just pulled him over to one side and "Don't you ever tell me that ever again." And this director never once did. So it felt very similar. So this idea of nostalgia, it's actually rooted in the fabric and the DNA of the club. We've been in this situation before.
And if you listen back to Football Weekly from 1986, we are having the same conversation. Welcome to part 2 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So the top of the championship looks like this. Coventry have 52 points. Middlesbrough 46, Ipswich 44 have a game in hand. Preston and Millwall on 43, Watford on 41 and Hull on 41. They both have a game in hand as well. Stoke at 8th on 40, Wrexham at 9th on 40 as well. Chris says, Coventry going to do a Walsall this season. Winless in their last 3, sort of 2 wins since the start of December. They are 6 points clear, George. But what is this, a wobble, a blip, a crisis? What's happened?
Somewhere between, it's definitely not a crisis. But I'd say they've been wobbling for too long that they're kind of really off balance now. I think with a wobble, you're still maintaining your centre of gravity. I think they're starting to lose that at the moment. Because not only have the results turned, they haven't won in their last 3, they've won 1 of their last 5, and that was a pretty unconvincing 1-0 win at home to Swansea. But I would argue that the performances haven't been great, dating quite a long way back to kind of the end of November. They lost 3-0 to Ipswich on the 6th of December, and since then, the performances, even in their good results, haven't been great. Their best players have gone from being Victor Torp early in the season, who now has lost that goal scoring touch. Brandon Thomas Asante, who had a ridiculous purple patch. Haji Wright at one point. These attacking players are now kind of struggling for form, and instead it's Carl Rushworth, their keeper, who I would say has been the main part and the main reason for the points they have got in this time. Ipswich have kind of done the double over them and twice looked by far the better team. Having kind of thought that there was an unassailable lead, they have to improve because they are, both in terms of results and performances, way off where they were early in the season. Yeah.
And I mean, Middlesbrough have been on a pretty dodgy run as well, Sanny. So it does sort of concertina, if that's the right, I'm trying to think, that does mean that, doesn't it? It makes it more exciting.
Yeah, it does. Just briefly going back to Coventry, because I watched quite a lot of them. Five Live keeps sending me to Coventry in a literal sense. And Frank Lampard said to me that he's complained about his squad being quite thin relative to other clubs in his position. And if you think about the run that they had, it was almost a different player within a period would then perform really well. Victor Torp was a great example, actually. Before that, Haji Wright. And they've kind of burnt through quite a few matches. They've had a few bugs going around as well. I shook Frank Lampard's hand after my interview and then realised that he had the flu. But thankfully, I'd had my jab, so I was okay.
Good.
So I think
that's a good phone-in. That's a great text topic for a radio show. So, have you ever got ill? Have you ever got the flu from a footballer? I'll keep that in my back pocket.
So they need reinforcements. They really do. And I think that they would be able to steady the ship. But yeah, George is right. Like Carl Rushworth has bailed them out a lot. For Middlesbrough, I mean, they had that great start, and Hellberg was like, get everyone forward, get it going, and we'll just get the results. And then it was 4 games, either losses or defeats, losses or a draw, and then a 4-0 win against Southampton to kind of right it. But yeah, if you think that Middlesbrough and Coventry both are like they're not recent Premier League teams, are they? They've not got any of the parachute payments. They've not got any of the players of that quality. I guess with thinner squads, you're expecting a drop-off, and key players, if they aren't on it every game, they're easily shown up in a league where there's quite similar teams. So then you look below them, and someone like Preston, which I was at last for when I don't know what day it was. I was there the last game. It could be any day. And they've got a couple of players coming back. Lewis Dobbin from injury, Militon Osmajic from his ban for the racial abuse of Hannibal Mejbri, for which he vehemently denied. And then you think, right, well, they've all of a sudden raised their level significantly having those two back, and that could give them a real chance. So it's a real kind of middling league, especially when you think that those teams were expecting, albeit Ipswich are up there, haven't been there this season at all.
Yeah, and actually on that financial thing, George, can Coventry afford to go big in January? And actually for those clubs like Preston and Millwall, Watford and Hull, the teams that do not often make it, I've never been in the Premier League like Preston or Millwall. Sort of feel, do you gamble? Do you go, this is January, but look, we're this close. Do we gamble?
I mean, I would say that most Championship clubs are gambling every single season, given the spend versus revenue. It's part of the reason why the league's in such a mess. But yeah, it does feel like this season in particular, there will be clubs who will look at their potential to get in the Premier League at the beginning of each season. So for a Millwall or a Preston, that's probably going to be 2, 3, 4%, and look at what that percentage chance is now and think, we have to make the most of this. We have to capitalise on this opportunity, and January is obviously the opportunity to do that. With Coventry, I wonder, Doug King there, since he's come in as their owner, he has definitely supported them financially. I would say their recruitment has been very good, rather than just spending big. Like they spend their money incredibly well. Interestingly, the only player they brought in so far is Yang, who has been at Portsmouth this season and really struggled to make any kind of an impact until he was the player that scored that goal that you wrote a piece about, Max, that shut up the Charlton Athletic fans who are singing "We Never Lose" at Fratton Park.
Best moment of 2025. Loved it so much. Watched it so many times.
Frank Lampard obviously read your piece and thought, yes, I want to buy this guy. I want to sign this guy. So he's now been sent packing from, to have a loan at a team struggling to avoid relegation and not getting the team, and then suddenly turn up at top of the league is not a move that we're used to seeing. But yeah, I don't think we'll see Coventry spend huge amounts of money. They've got a very good squad and a lot of depth in that squad too. And I would imagine that the club are. It feels to me like they are run in a way that they won't panic because of a few poor results in terms of who they look to bring in. But yeah, I think because Southampton look like they'll be miles off it this season. Leicester are obviously not going to be troubling. Well, it seems like aren't going to be troubling the top end of the table, especially if that points deduction ever comes in. There will definitely be non-parachute payment teams who are currently in the top 8 or 9 who are looking at this window saying this is the time that we've got to go for it because we're never going to have a better chance to get there.
Sure. And Wrexham could be one of those as well, George. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
The romance has now gone, Wrexham. Is that how we're meant to describe them now?
Was there ever any romance? But yeah, maybe. I think we have to just assess them for what they are in terms of a team now. And I think Phil Parkinson deserves massive credit. I know that people like to, when teams spend money, it's fashionable, I guess, to downplay the achievements of a manager as if it's just easy to win games of football and win promotion when your owners are giving you lots of cash. I don't think that's necessarily played out. Generally, we see a lot of teams who spend a lot of money, who have high budgets, underperform. And for Parky to come up into a league where he's really struggled in the past, his record in the second tier is poor, to turn this Wrexham team very quickly into the very worst mid-table championship side, especially given when they were 3-1 down after 25 minutes on Boxing Day against Sheffield United in the late kickoff. They weren't that far clear of the relegation zone. And at that moment, in what was a really poor run of form, it looked like the wheels were kind of coming off. And they came back and won that game 5-3. They've won every game since, and now they're on the fringes of the playoffs. And again, because the league is so open and because it kind of feels like, if you look back at previous championship teams at the top end, there's normally a kind of relentlessness to them, whether that's Burnley and Leeds last season, and as soon as Sheffield United kind of stopped being relentless in terms of their winning, they fell away very quickly. Whether that was Ipswich and whoever else finished around in the season before, Leicester under Maresca. Like normally the top teams just churn out results consistently, and that isn't really happening now that Coventry have dropped off. So yeah, I think Wrexham have a huge chance if they continue the way they're going and finishing the top 6.
If you're in the Championship, basically you're either in danger of getting relegated or you're in with a chance of getting promoted.
Or both.
Or both. Do you expect an awful lot of Championship sides to just sack off the FA Cup with the third round coming up?
100%. I think so.
Do you think so?
I think there's a lot of managers going, we need to give our players a rest, and we'll do that in the cup. I think we're seeing that.
Hope Birmingham do. God, that would be good.
So I do think we'll see a lot of rotation. What is it? 22 games on TV? Yeah, not so sure how many of those will be as great as they could be. Reserves against reserves. Who knows?
You mentioned lots of teams in danger of going down. Yeah, so Sheffield Wednesday on -7. But then they've all played different number of games. But Oxford have 22 points, Norwich 24, Portsmouth 25, Blackburn 28, Charlton 29, West Brom, who just sacked Ryan Mason, 31, Swansea 32, Sheffield United 32, Southampton 33. Sanny, we should start with Ryan Mason. They lost 10 on the spin away from home, hadn't they? They started the season really, like first 4 games or something, they started really well, but it just hasn't worked out.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate because, his reputation as a coach is there. I think sometimes there've been some big moments where some of his decisions, which come back to him as far as like substitutions go, have kind of hurt him as well. Mikey Johnston, who continues to be really good, like anytime you might see him pop up on highlights or on social media doing something, like he's still that guy. And again against Leicester, he was excellent. They were in the contest, and he hit the post at one point. He was still causing loads of danger. But I was at West Brom's trip to Coventry a couple of weeks before that, where they were leading at the break, and Mason subbed him off at half time for no reason, and it completely derailed the momentum. In this game, in this run of 10 without a win, there have been some strange moments where it didn't have to go that way, and the away fans are, understandably frustrated. Had it been 10 home games, I think he wouldn't have lasted this long at all. And I think that record is like a century old or something. They're approaching that. I mean, it's really bad. And as it happened, on that post-match interview, I actually didn't ask him a question. He looked so kind of defeated And he was saying how it wasn't good enough, and he said quite a few things of that sort of ilk post-match. I just let BBC Radio WM's reporter ask the questions, and I was like, "It's all right, Ryan. I don't have anything else to ask you. Didn't want to rub it in." So I really feel for him. He's been ground down, and I hope he can bounce back. But it's a really difficult one, and they've had to sell a lot of players as well. But within that, someone like Hegerberg has been amazing. He's like a proper poacher in the box. Running at full tilt and getting his toe on the end and getting a goal. So they've got like some of the tools there. They've lost quite a few, but he's just not managed to pull it together. It's very unfortunate. And wherever they are, where are they now? On my little crib sheet that Barry definitely didn't look at, 18th on the table. It's not great, is it?
I mean, you can't call the league table a crib sheet. No, I have to say.
Barry doesn't need a crib sheet. He's an EFL expert.
Exactly. I think they're readily available league tables. Oxford sacked Gary Rowett just before Christmas. George, your very own Oxford United. How do you feel?
Impatient, because it's been a while since we sacked him, and we're still waiting for a new manager. I think fans are kind of getting a bit concerned as to why it's taken this long. I know there was a bit of a public outcry when Gary Rowett got sacked, the perception being that, can Oxford get any better than Rowett? Possibly not in terms of a previous CV, but, he gave an amazing post-match interview where he basically said that he'd run out of drawing boards. And I think, Rowett himself would probably concede that, despite the amazing jobs that he's done in the past, maybe, his grip on the team and the performances were sliding, and he wasn't necessarily sure how to get the best out of this side. And I would definitely think that even though the perception is that Oxford should get relegated this season, we've seen in certain games that this is a squad very capable of winning games and doing so on the front foot with a kind of a core of very good attacking players or technically good players, which isn't necessarily what Rowett likes in terms of the success he's had in the past, where it's mainly been built on a really good out of possession shape and good defensive unit, which is something that we maybe lack. So intrigued to see who's going to come in. As far as I know,
Ange again sounds perfect.
Oh my god. But it's, as far as I know, the club kind of concluded an interview process just after Christmas, and I've been basically waiting for the owner to make a decision as to which of the candidates he wants to be the manager, and yet it's the 7th of January and we still don't know. So, and there doesn't seem to be any white smoke yet coming from the stadium. So we'll have to wait and see. But it's going to be a big job for whoever takes it on, and I think it's always so difficult for managers to come into a job now because Oxford are odds on to go down in the relegation zone, far away from safety. But I can guarantee you that if Oxford get relegated this season, the finger will be pointed at the manager regardless of the job that he's done, which is just the way that the world works. So yeah, I can see why it might not be the most appealing, and why maybe Eric Torhier, our owner, who's a very ambitious, very wealthy man, he might want a manager that is possibly unattainable, but we'll have to see.
Sheffield Wednesday have 3 members of the consortium selected as the preferred bidder have been revealed. They describe themselves as a privately funded group of investors led by James Board and Felix Roma, with Al Sharif Faisal bin Jamil described as the consortium's chief executive. Sanny, George, do we know anything about these people?
James Board is someone who seemingly has made a big name for himself in the world of poker. There's a quite a long list, I would say, of people involved in gambling, having quite a good record working at football clubs, given, I think, an understanding of probability and chance is quite an important thing for someone who's going to make decisions in football to have. The only concern for Wednesday fans is that James Board is also the man who is kind of credited with his AI company being the company that flagged up certain players to another championship club over the summer who just happened to be their rival, Sheffield United. And this AI tool flagged up some players from Bulgaria and various other places around the world, and they have not played a single minute, and the club are trying to get rid of them at the moment. So that doesn't bode too well in terms of recruitment, although he's also the part owner of Dunfermline, who have done some quite interesting things in recruitment, and a couple of these, I think they've got a centre-back who they brought in who's done very well, a young player. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see.
Did the AI players not work well because they were actually AI, and that
they didn't actually exist.
They didn't. Fair enough. Sanny?
They kept having to give them prompts in order to actually do what they were doing on the pitch.
Just away from Sheffield Wednesday and just looking at any other clubs, just to quickly flag, I would flag Blackburn Rovers, who have been absolutely atrocious at home this season. Only won 2. It's a pretty depressing place when I've been there this season. They did get a win against Millwall. That was a couple of games ago, and then 2 0-0s and then lost again. So before a 2-2 draw with producer Joel's Charlton, but it's really bad. And lazy as this might sound, but the return of Todd Cantwell, I think, will be the difference between them staying up and going down. They put a lot through him. He's the only one who can kind of thinks about breaking the lines a bit and kind of gets the fans off the feet, and they need a bit of that. It'll almost justify the fact he's got personalised gloves, I believe. But that and some teams around them being even worse, they might be the only reason they stay up. They've sold a lot of key players. You know, we know the Venky sort of model of selling on, but it's pretty depressing. Were it not for a very good academy and someone like Campbell still available, I'd be very worried for them.
So League One, the top of it looks like this. Cardiff have 51 points. Lincoln 48, Bradford 46, Huddersfield and Bolton 39, and Stockport 39, Stevenage 37, Luton 35, and Reading 35. Played a few, different number of games. How do we see League One then, Sanny?
Well, first off, I'd say that Lincoln continues to just be an amazing story. And the prospect of Lincoln West Ham is a real possibility next season, which would be very exciting for the away fans to Lincoln, which is lovely. And you've got a great view of the cathedral, which is great. 60,000 stadium at West Ham and Lincoln might not work quite so well. So they've done amazingly well. They're on this incredible run. Very excited and kind of giving Cardiff a run for the money. So very happy about them. You'll notice Stevenage have kind of dropped down out of the playoff picture at the moment. I kind of hope they can get back up there, only because the job that Alex Ravel's done is essentially with not a massive amount of signings, and they've all been just playing out of the skin. But it does feel like they, someone like Huddersfield, who was very slow at the start of the season, but brought in all these players, have kind of caught them up. So yeah, it's an exciting League One.
Yeah, I think a sigh of relief went round Cardiff because early speculation that Barry Murphy might have been of interest to Strasbourg, which wouldn't be a huge surprise given he was Enzo Maresca's successor at the Manchester City development team, and we know that Chelsea like to recruit from the Manchester City academy, given the background of some of their staff. So he will now be staying. I just cannot overstate what an incredible job he's done. I know there is a perception that Cardiff in League One should be one of the better teams in the league, but you look at what's happened to Luton this season, already gone through one manager, and Jack Wilshere not having the best time of things, albeit with a couple of better recent performances. And Cardiff didn't really strengthen in the summer. He inherited this group of young talent who hadn't necessarily, the Championship is a hard place to showcase it, but he's brought them all on. Like now, if as and when they return back to the Championship, I'd say Cardiff have 4 or 5 players whose market value will be well in excess of £5 million. And that's down to Barry Murphy coming in and coaching them and implementing a really attractive style of play. And it's a reminder, I think, especially as we hit the second week of January, that as fans were so obsessed with players' recruitment, and there seems to be this idea that the only way that you can improve as a football team is to go out and buy players. And Cardiff is a reminder that actually going out and being clever in your managerial recruitment can be the best value thing that you do, and getting someone in who can take the group of players that you've already got and breathe some life into them, develop them as players, can often be a much kind of more streamlined and more efficient way to improve. I think he'll go right to the very top. And Cardiff, I totally agree with Sanny that the job that Michael Skabala doing pound for pound is incredible. But Cardiff, to me, are the best team in the league, and I'm sure they'll win it.
Stockport have just brought in Josh Stokes on loan, who was the only good thing for Cambridge last season. He's a really good player, sort of number 10, bustling number 10 from Bristol City. He's really
just on
good.
Josh Stokes, by the way, when they were playing Huddersfield a couple of seasons ago, I was walking back from Huddersfield Stadium, and the car park for the media is a bit away. And the guy next to me was just wearing like a Cambridge jacket. I said, "Oh, you didn't do too badly today." And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "What's your involvement in the club?" "Oh, no, I'm a player." It was Josh Stokes.
Oh, nice.
I'd just been watching him for 90 minutes. I hadn't even realised he was the best player. I hadn't noticed at all. So yeah, I hope he does well.
At the bottom, then, Port Vale, a little way adrift, 18 points, although they won the last game. Doncaster have 23, Rotherham 24, Burton 27. That's a relegation zone. Above that, Orient, Northampton, Blackpool, Barnsley. I mean, Barry mentioned the Championship was tight. This, George, is ridiculous in League One.
Yeah, and we kind of joked in the Championship that you can be in danger of relegation and promotion at the same time. I mean, it's no joke in League One. You absolutely can be. Like, if you are Peterborough, going through a brilliant run of form, you are currently 7 points behind 6th, Stockport on 39 points. But you're also 5 points clear of the relegation zone. Like Peterborough, AFC Wimbledon, Mansfield, those teams in there, there is no doubt at all that they could either finish in the top 6 very, very comfortably if they put on a good run of form, or if they slide, they could finish in the bottom 4. It's a brilliant league. It's unpredictable this season. There are the couple of class teams where you look at Cardiff, Lincoln and Bradford at the top who have a big gap to Huddersfield, Bolton and Stockport. But if there are 3 teams who you reckon could really make a run at the end of the season to crash that party, it's probably those 3, given the quality they've got in their team and their ability to recruit in January, as we've seen already from Stockport and Josh Stokes. So, yeah, an amazing league. I wouldn't like to predict now, although I'm going to have to next week, who's going to be going up and who's going to be going down. Apart from, as I say, I think Cardiff, I'll be very surprised if they're not in the top 2.
Some run from Peterborough. At one point, I was very excited to see that we would bypass them on our way up from League Two. Do we have any more information on Luke Williams before for listeners who aren't totally across his
the Swansea one? He was he was working in an airport in between jobs as well, if you recall. He was being a porter.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's right.
He was he's very good. He was the manager of Notts County who led them back into the EFL, and then he got the Swansea job. And as is often the case with Swansea managers, he started well, then it kind of tailed off a little bit. But he's come in at Peterborough and really improved them. Kind of plays good football, and they've got a striker called Harry Leonard, who they brought in from Blackburn, who I think will be it's been a while since Peterborough bought a striker for £1 million and sold them for kind of £7 million. But if they're going to do it again, it feels like Leonard could be that.
Has there been any Australian reaction to John Brady taking up Port Vale? Is he now like every Australian's third club or something? Anyone noticed that?
I will say, in the environs of Melbourne's inner north, there has been precisely no reaction to that news, but more as we get it. So the top of League Two, Bromley have 48 points on a great run, Swindon 46, Walsall 43, Salford 43, MK Dons 41, Cambridge 41, Chesterfield 40, Notts County 39. I mean, look, Sanny, if Bromley, it would be some story if they won this. If they went,
it would be amazing. It kind of feeds into the wider narrative of the 3-up campaign from the National League, because Bromley were very recently in the National League, of course, weren't they? So it's been an incredible run. I feel like it's almost lazy to say, Michael Cheek's just doing great, but he is 12 goals. But the team around him seems to be just doing so well. The manager, whose name escapes me at this moment.
Andy Woodman, is it?
Yes, Andy Woodman. I was going to say, he's a very charismatic man. So charismatic, I forgot his name.
He's Gareth Southgate's best friend. That's all we need to know.
Yeah, right? Woody and Nord. They wrote a combined autobiography together.
Wow. Tell us more.
Yeah, it was called Woody. I mean, I know this because Andy Woodman was Oxford's goalkeeper, so I read it when I was about 12. They came through at Crystal Palace together. Gareth Southgate is Freddie Woodman, the goalkeeper's godfather, who was Andy Woodman's son. And they wrote a book together called Woody and Nord, which I can't imagine there are that many copies, but there is one on my bookshelf. And it's just about them growing up as friends.
Is it a page turner? Is it every bit as good as Grisham?
Look, if you're an Oxford fan and you're 12 years old, it was a page turner. I haven't read it since. I can definitely read it and let you know next time we're on the I'm on the pod.
How do you see the rest of the top of League Two, George?
Just incredibly competitive again. Like, League Two is mad in terms of runs like Bromley's, because the cliche in the Championship is anyone can be anyone. I don't necessarily think that's always the case, but in League Two, it's so unpredictable. So when you win 5 games in a row or 6 games in a row, you tend to fly up the table, which is what's happened with Bromley. Swindon having a brilliant season under Ian Holloway. I've doubted their staying power, but making me look like that might have been bias rather than any analysis, because they continue doing it. Walsall under Matt Sadler, for them to go again after the difficulty of last season has been incredibly impressive. I think a lot of people thought that they would drop off and Sadler would get sacked, but he's, I think, showing what a good operator he is. MK Dons, despite being fifth, have probably been a bit disappointing, like with the money that they spent in the summer, and I'm led to believe they're going to spend pretty heavily again in January, and with kind of master promotion winner Paul Warne in charge. We probably thought that they would have mounted more of a challenge on top spot than they have so far. But I still think Cambridge are a team that, because they're so solid and because they give very little away and because they've got Neil Harris, who I think guarantees you a certain benchmark. I'm still, as I said last time I was on, I'm still pretty convinced that Cambridge are going to have something to say at the business end of the season. Yeah, we look quite good. I mean, it's obviously that's when it gets worrying. But I sort of starting to, just solid. Like Pelly Ruddock and Penzu, who obviously went all the way up the leagues with Luton, is such a great player. There was a really great moment, I think it was Gillingham away, where Gillingham had a penalty. And our keeper saved it. He's very good at saving penalties. And at the corner, like, you can hear someone's filming it. It might even be like one of the cameras. And he is just saying to the crowd, you sit down, you sit down, you sit down, you sit down. Corner comes in, Gillingham score a header. And it's like, okay, mate, maybe it's not quite as good as the Charlton fans, but it's up there. At the bottom, Harrogate and Newport, Christian Fuchs' Newport, both on 17, then Shrewsbury 19, Crawley 19, Bristol Rovers 21, Barrow 24, and a bit of a jump up to them. Who's going down, chaps? I'll start with you, Sanny.
Well, since we last spoke, Christian Fuchs has got his first win. That's a 2-0 against Crewe, so that's something. So whether he's still being held to ransom by the guy who runs his academy for him and he can get back there, I don't know. He's 2 points off safety, because that's all you need is a couple of wins. So that's a big push. Harrogate is it's Simon Weaver, isn't it? Whose dad's the chair, so he's never going to be in any trouble on that side of things. But maybe are they running out of time now? I think just have they burnt all their matches? Are they kind of, I don't know where else they can really go. They've been doing so well for so long, kind of punching above the weight. But then again, they're also only 2 points from safety, so it could be anyone really. By the way, just very quickly at the top, I do think Walsall are very much dropping off. I don't think they'll be going up at all. I'll spare
they didn't
the
look great
for next time.
Yeah. No, we beat them 2-0 and they didn't look great. I suppose the interesting thing at the bottom of League Two is those sides that were in League One, Shrewsbury, George, Bristol Rovers.
Yeah, I think they're probably going to get away from it now. They had that horrific losing run, which eventually Steve Evans managed to stop with a draw, and then they were 2-0 up against Bromley on Boxing Day, had a man sent off and lost 3-2, which is pretty frustrating. But we saw them last time out go to Shrewsbury in what was a massive game for both for Evans in terms of trying to get his first win, but also for Shrewsbury, given where they both were on the table. And they went there and they won 3-0. And given the quality of the squad that Evans has got, and given the underlying numbers, their XG data was suggested they were just getting ridiculously unlucky in terms of that they had something like 120 shots to score 2 goals in this run. Like it was a crazy run that couldn't really continue. The turnaround was probably going to come, and I'd be surprised if they got relegated. Big concern for Shrewsbury. Michael Appleton is their manager, who there is a bit of a history at the moment of teams going down from League One and then falling straight out of the EFL. We've seen a couple of clubs do it, Forest Green being one of them, and a couple of others, Carlisle being another. And they look in massive danger of doing it again. It's a club that have been looking, for outside investment for quite a long time. The fans, I think, are really frustrated with the inability to do that and to sell the club. There were rumours in the summer that a sale was coming, but it didn't come. And it feels like a club that is just basically just falling behind the rest of football right now in terms of what they're able to do. The perception from the outside is that they shouldn't be down there, but I think, and we said at the beginning of the season, I think if Appleton keeps them up, then that would be a job well done, given the demise there. And with Newport are definitely improving under Fuchs, but the difficulty for them is Sammy Braybrook, who is their best player by miles. And I'd also almost say, in kind of a weird, it doesn't often happen that one of the best players in a league plays for a team in 23rd or 24th, but I would say that he has been one of the standout players in League Two this season, on loan from Leicester. And Leicester recalled him and sent him straight to Chesterfield, where he played 90 minutes on the weekend. So losing one of the best players in the league out of a team that are already struggling is going to be hard for Fuchs to deal with. But they're definitely in a better spot now than they were previously.
So you mentioned Steve Evans there. Did you see how much weight he has lost?
Incredible.
When he was unveiled as Bristol Rovers manager, it was quite incredible. I would say inspirational to all us chubsters out there.
And then he sent 5 loan players back yesterday, so he's obviously he's in the mood for shedding weight. Clearly, Steve Evans.
No, it's quite an extra. I didn't believe it was him. It was, you're right, Barry. Credit to the guy.